Welcome to Coffee with the Sarlos. I'm Kelly.
And I'm Karen.
We are a mother-daughter duo of mediums, medical intuitives, psychics, and energy healers offering personal sessions to clients all over the world. And this is our podcast.
Coffee with the Sarlos is a platform to share the remarkable experiences of our clients and the messages that are channeled for them from the spirit world. These stories will make you laugh, some will make you cry, and some are certain to be an absolute butt-kicking with love.
Our intent for this podcast is to gently and kindly challenge your beliefs, grow your empathy, and help you find pieces of your own self in each one of these individual stories. Before we jump into today's show, we have a few notes for our listeners. Karen and I have personal practices channeling for local and international clients. If the stories in these shows is something you'd like to experience, you can request your own personal session through our website, bysarlo.com. We also have gift certificates available if you wish to gift this experience to someone anywhere in the world.
We have a second podcast series called Sips of Sanity. This series is your emotional and intuitive intelligence toolkit.
We pick one topic every month and provide you with healthy tools for critical thinking and communication. This series airs the first week of every month. The first show is free and can be found on our website, your favorite podcast platform, or YouTube. The full series can be found on patreon.com/bysarlo. Patreon is our membership portal with a ton of monthly benefits for those of you seeking to grow your emotional and intuitive intelligence. Karen has a personal blog that explores the beauty and importance of intuitive gifts. There's a question and answer segment that addresses listeners' questions. As we mentioned, you can find the complete Sips of Sanity series here, along with handy habit trackers and great reflective questions to help you get the most from the shows. We provide you with guided journeys and music to enrich that experience, and we're running an emotionally intelligent, interactive book club. And for patrons in our top tier, each month we're putting your names into a draw for a free half-hour channeling session with Karen or myself. If you're interested in joining us, head over to patreon.com/bysarlo. Now, on to the show.
Good morning, Kelly.
Oh, good morning, Karen.
Oh, that sounds like there's purpose behind that good morning.
I'm stressed.
Are you?
Yeah, you know what? Like, for anyone watching the show, I'm so sorry. I'm not a videographer. I can't fit myself into the screen. It's just, the cameras are a constant struggle, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
And it's on me, and so I feel that pressure. So it's one of those days where you wish you had a bigger team, even though on most days we're so glad to be a team of two.
Yeah.
It's just...
I know.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, I know you do.
I wish that we had Ed Regan in our back pocket.
Oh, yes.
I get it.
Yeah.
Just to have somebody of that caliber be able to be here to help all the time. But he has his own life, Kelly.
And a beautiful, flourishing career, which we're so happy about. Now, Mom, you have a part 2 prepared today, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
So for those of you who were listening last week, we have a follow-up to Badia's story.
Yeah.
And for those of you who weren't listening last week, now's a good time to hit the pause button now that I've, got my stress out. Thank you for listening. And go back and listen.
Yeah.
You mentioned, this was not intentional.
No.
You mentioned in the first show, the previous show, that you were going to give a bunch of examples. Mm-hmm. Then we dove into one, me unknowing, about where this was supposed to be going. The conversation just got really good, and you chose to kind of back off, let the show be what it was, and give this its own time.
Yeah, and it could happen again.
Cool. You know what? And I really love and respect the way that you make those executive decisions.
Well, I'm hoping for the listeners that they appreciate it too. But what I really did try to do was condense this so that we can get it done in a second show.
Well, we haven't lost anyone over Badia's story, so I think they're fine.
Okay. So, if listeners are just listening to the podcast and have never had a session, maybe they will still understand how freaking random the sessions are. And that some sessions have such a flow. They ask for one thing and it just moves beautifully and gradually, like a well-done script, right into the next. And other sessions are not. And it's partly sometimes because the client will just say, okay, I'm done that. Now move on. I want to know about my pet. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
they kind of derail themselves.
Yes. And sometimes it's because they get their information and they're happy. And sometimes they don't like the information, or they don't think we're good, or that it's accurate, or it's going to come true. And they dismiss it and move on. There's a bunch of reasons.
Some are just so damn anxious. They can't
Yeah.
listen long enough before they anxiously start shifting.
Yes, that's right. And some of them just have brains that function that way. So Badia has this happens in her sessions, but I'm trying to follow along in one particular vein with a story so that everybody gets a closure about it.
I'm distracted. I'm going to be one of those people. I'm thinking, I had this vivid thought last night. I'm totally binging Blind Spot on Netflix recently. It's an FBI show. And you see over the course of these shows how rapidly they take in so much information about their surroundings, as well as audible information. And I remember thinking, looking at the screen, they must be so bored with us civilians. Like, to get into a regular relationship with just a regular human being, they must be like, come on, hurry up, give me the facts faster. Because they're so used to that quick absorption process and then action that I just think life would bore them.
Well, and this is what, an investigator?
Yeah, it's FBI.
FBI? Well, that might be my next partner then.
Well, maybe. I think you'd do well with a top negotiator. I think you could rival them.
Well,
This would be fun. Applications open tomorrow.
No.
Just kidding.
Okay, so Badia.
Yes.
So she has a series of appointments with me. And so what we are doing here is we are pulling the threads through the different sessions. And in one of her sessions, she asks me, in several of them, she asks me about her mom. She wants to know if she's going to get her mom's house. She wants to know, she asked that question just flat out one day. Will I get my mom's house when she dies? And the guides say no. And she never asks me why. She just asks the question. And then another day, she asks the question, will I get my grandmother's house when she dies? And the answer is no. And again, she never asks the question, why or why not? And then further in the sessions, the guides reveal, through this process, because now, remember, Badia has had cancer, thyroid, and then it spreads into the pelvis. So they're talking about, as we move through the sessions, she finally figures out her own answer. And she says to me, and I think it was around the fourth session, she says, I want you to know I've got my notes. She says, when I phone you, I've got all my sessions, all my notes on a table in front of me. And and I will highlight and draw arrows, and I will link
Like an investigator.
Yeah, I know, it's really funny. I will link what you've said, and sometimes I will notice that I wrote down an answer, but I will write down afterwards in my own notes in purple pen, why didn't I ask why not? And then she says, and then I'll think, geez, I wonder why I didn't ask that day. It would have been the most logical thing to ask Karen. And then she says, and then all of a sudden, in around the fourth session, when you told me that the cancer was going to return, and that it did, that I'm going to die before my mom and my grandmother. And she says, now that is a fact. That is no longer something that I can wonder about unless they drop dead in the next couple of weeks, because I'm palliative. I now know I have less than a month to live. So I understand why I didn't ask the questions, even though I didn't know it at the time. I just found that so interesting.
I think I'm going to use a word that I really shy away from most of the time. I think that's really divine. Oh. And I don't mean in a godlike. I just simply mean that those are the guides giving her the information she needs that day and no more.
Yeah.
Because had she not been in a place to hear, you're going to pass before them, that would have been a terrible question.
Yeah, it would have been. And I think of all of the anxiety that it would have caused her over that whole period of time of seeing her from session to session, which isn't like 1 week after another, right?
Yeah, it also may have been too where you would have got the message from the guides, we're not answering that because we get no's. And if we and they get a no, then they can sit with it and ask it another time or try and ask it in a different way. But again, if you're not ready for it to click, to actually process that, then how all of this unfolded, like I mentioned, was divine.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'm going to go back again and bring them forward again. So another one that she had asked near the beginning was about a partner. Will I have love in this lifetime? Will I fall in love again? And I said to her, "Oh, you're asking more than one question." And she went, "Well, it's the same thing." And I went,
Lady. Will I fall in love again is one question. Will I have another partner in this lifetime is a completely separate question. There's also a third that's not being asked, which is, are they the same person?
yeah. And so we went through this little conversation around that, and the guide said to her, there is a gentleman that she's currently interested in. This is why she's asking you. And it's a gentleman that lives close. It's a neighbor. And he comes over and he helps her, and he helps her mom and her grandma when she's over, and he goes over for coffee. He'll pop by and mow the lawn. He does all these things. They're friends. They go for walks every day together. He's always checking in on her, and he very much cares for her and believes that he loves her. And she said, "Oh," and she was kind of like, "Oh, okay, well, is this going to be my partner?" And she would ask questions. So over a period of time here, and I'm going to say we get to the end of this in our very last session together, where the guides say to her, did you truly receive his affection? And she goes, "What?" And she says, "Well, yeah, like I let him mow the lawn. Yeah, like I listened." And I said, "No, the guides want to know if you truly received what he was giving you. You know what he was trying to give you. It was connection." "No." And I said, or the guide said, "Keep asking her these questions. Did you try? Did you see if there was any feeling back? Did you make an effort back?" And she goes, "Well, like I've been to his place once for coffee." She goes, "So yeah." And I said, "No, they're talking about making a connection with him. Like truly compassionately listening to him, but also truly asking questions of interest of him." And she goes, "Oh, I don't know what that means."
I took this in a different direction altogether, but I like what you're bringing up. My head went to when you asked the question, did you truly receive? Like we can say thank you and be very anxious about it and not really receive it because we convince ourselves we weren't worthy, that they did a favor to us, that we owe them something. Like that is not true receiving just because the act got done, the lawn is mowed. But please continue, because I think the questions that you're posing are very potentially helpful if people are really listening themselves to ask if they truly receive in their relationships.
They asked her if she really asked questions out of sincere interest in him. Or if it was, "I'll ask you how you're doing because I'm hoping you'll see that the lawn needs mowing. I'll go for a walk with you because if we're friends, you'll help me."
So when she originally asked if she would have a partner, she wasn't asking about him. She was like, "What? How did this come up?"
She was asking about anybody in general.
And how did we start talking about this gentleman neighbor?
The guides brought him up the first time.
Oh, okay. So her intention wasn't to ask, is he the one that loves me? She wasn't even inquiring about him.
Not at first.
Gotcha. I was not following this.
Not at first. But they bring him up at first. And it's not to encourage her. It's to say that there is an interest there, that this is a possibility for her.
Because of him and his feelings.
Yes, but it's also written in their contracts together.
Okay.
And it is not within her to reach that deeply for anyone.
Whoa. So that came out as part of the contract?
That's correct. Everything is negotiable. Like the way that she sees relationships is negotiating. There's not a deep connection. And she doesn't look to make one. She doesn't ask the questions, but she doesn't emote. She doesn't feel it.
So I felt a little guilty talking about the FBI in the beginning of this session. And the more you bring up these terms, I'm thinking, wow, what a great weave in the show. Because you're talking about straight up negotiation.
Yeah.
You think about a situation where you're just trying to get what you want, which is what Badia sounds like she was doing at this point. I don't know if it progresses. But that's not connection. That's just a form of manipulation.
That's right. And as she gets sicker, as her mother does, as her grandmother does, her fears escalate and she becomes more manipulative out of the fears of who's going to take care of these people.
I hope it is not lost on people exactly what you just said. That because there's a lack of effort for connection, that drives up the fear. And therefore, I have to do more manipulating, more negotiating in order to make the fear kind of subside temporarily, knowing ultimately that there's no deep connection that will actually make me feel safe from those fears.
You got it.
Please sit back and reflect on that, about your own life and the efforts that you're making.
And this is what comes through for Badia, how you've explained this, is explained to her in that last session when she's palliative. Our last call, as far as I know, will ever be our last call together. Because the guides come through and explain this to her. They explain what she did. They want to sit with her for her to understand it before she passes. And I wrote it all out on the back of this page, but you explained it.
I think I said a couple of sessions.
So let me just hold it up. There are my notes.
Hey, they're very bulleted and detailed.
I wanted to continue with something in here though, because
It's your show too.
Yeah, thanks. You did a beautiful job of it,
Thanks.
which you so very often do, which is why I love working with you. And I've said that so many times in this show. I would like now to add, because there are more questions that the guides wanted me to ask her from them on this page. But before I step into that, she asked me a question earlier before you did
Went
such
off.
a beautiful job of explaining everything. She asked me if this man was going to grieve her when she died, or if he just wanted her money.
Whoa.
And it was so shocking to me.
So okay, just for clarifying purposes, she assumed that the acts of service he was offering her was in efforts to get into her will?
Yeah.
Okay. I understand.
Go on.
No, I'm trying not to judge.
No. Why do you understand?
Well, I would assume she's been through some really big hurt in her life and been manipulated herself, because I don't think anyone jumps to that conclusion unless you have personally been wronged or witnessed someone that you love been wronged in a similar way.
You got it. You got it. I knew you would wrap it up if I just asked you to explain. So the guides come through to discuss these things with her and tell her that she is understanding things now. They want to work through all of this before she crosses over so that when she literally is at the end, it can be peaceful.
I'm also going to just kind of interject and say, which is probably why they asked the question, did you even receive what he offered you? Because if she was observing and using, I am going to add that just for good measures, what he was offering, then there's no way she could receive if she constantly had her questions or her backup to assume the very worst.
Yeah. Which, over the period of these sessions, interspersed with the medical intuitive, which she will always lead with, wanting her medical, her mother's, and her grandmother's, and then move into the next part of the session where it would be around things like him, what he wants, will there be money? And then the very last thing that she asks me, and the very last session is, will I die with money? And again, I was so taken aback at the question. But obviously something very important to her. And so she says, I just want to know, like before I die, will I have money? And the spirit guide said, she's asking you if she'll win a lottery.
Oh.
And I'm like, what? She's palliative. And they said, well, she still wants to know. She's still getting her mom when she goes out to buy tickets. Hey, Ma, remember, pick up my tickets. And I said, oh, okay. And so the guide said, we won't answer that because I don't want them to answer that. Mm-hmm. I don't ever answer that question for any single human being on this planet. I refuse to. It's just part of what I don't want to do list. Mm-hmm. It's just not my thing. Don't want to tell people about stocks and bonds. I don't want to tell them
about gold or where your passport is.
Remember the lady that called me from Timmins and said she'd fly me to Timmins if I could pick out the next gold mine or nickel mine?
Personally, I'd like to fly somewhere else than Timmins.
Everyone in Northern Ontario is going to laugh at that, but they may also feel compassion for your comment. Mm-hmm. And maybe the people in Timmins might go, what?
They know.
Okay. Yeah, she wanted to know. And I just, when the question catches you off guard,
yeah.
But you're also so interested in the answer, but you're also so interested in just understanding the backstory to it. To me, there's such a backstory as to why people will ask that, especially if you're calling somebody when you know you're going to pass. She believes firmly that she's passing within the month.
So if I put myself in her shoes, if I was dying and palliative at this moment, it may be a question that I would ask because I would want to leave money to you.
That was my thought.
I would want to make sure that you're playing the lottery. You can't use that word. I would want to be able to support the people left behind so that you didn't have to worry.
And what came through in that is that, no, her mom and her grandmother. No, her mom and her grandmother have money. The reason that she's asking is because she doesn't want to die poor.
What does that mean?
No, she just doesn't want to die poor. That's what it means.
Who knows? No one prints that in your obituary. Died rich.
Just saying.
Died poor.
Just saying. I'm just saying.
Okay.
This is just something that bothered her whole life, was that everything was difficult because she didn't have money and that she had to ask grandma or mom for money.
How does that change anything? If you're dying of terminal cancer, you're dying with a massive struggle. Dying rich doesn't fix that.
Yes, I know. I'm just saying that these are the things that are on people's minds when they're dying. And I don't mean every human. I'm sure there will be listeners that will say, not on mine. Not on mine, thanks.
I'm learning.
And so am I. And I think, I don't know, maybe I'm making a mistake today thinking that it would be of interest to someone else to hear that. But I think it could be, because it really speaks to the fact of how deeply she is distressed every day of her life because of finances, because of money.
Yeah, I'm just really not making the connection.
I'm saying she can't let it go. Mm-hmm. I'm saying how much we hang on to what we think about ourselves or what we think other people think of us, right to the very end. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that all of those thoughts make sense. Some people might die and say, well, did he love me? You know, there was this guy back in high school and it didn't work out. So I need to know before I die. So did he love me? And some people will cross over and meet the spirit guides and go, hey, now you've got an answer. Did he love me? Could I have made more money? Like, these are some of the questions. And I just thought it was worth sharing. Mm-hmm. It speaks to what stresses us, how we carry our stress to our last breath. And sometimes how when we're dying, and people say, why wouldn't mom let go? Why wouldn't grandma let go? Why did somebody be declared dead 3 times and they still wouldn't let go? These are the things we think about when we can't let go. And it wasn't one of the ones that I would have thought of. So when it came up in this session, I thought, I'm going to share that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I don't often see you speechless, so I'm just going to look at you for a moment.
Oh, please don't. I'm so uncomfortable. Yeah, okay.
And I understand because I remember in that last session being quite uncomfortable when she asked the question. And just the fact that she wasn't going to come into all of this money.
Well, that's not the issue that I would have.
I had many issues with it of trying to understand it.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, Kelly, that since the sessions are done, it sits like it just sat there with me for a while to be able to try to digest that this is what she's thinking about.
Yeah, see, and now I'm like, okay, Karen's going to keep talking because this show can't end like this. I'm so filled with sadness. My thought is just how sad, and I know that's judgmental. I feel anxious for her that is something that would waste so much of her time.
It was her last question of her last of 6 sessions. Mm-hmm. That was, and to me, it was like, oh, I just remember being done with it and just sitting there and not having a good feeling that was the last time I would speak to her as a human. Mm-hmm. But it was the way she chose to end it. Mm-hmm. Instead of saying, what can I look forward to? What's it like to cross over? Like I've had other sessions with people who are palliative where it's like, can you tell me what it's like when you cross over? Can you say, like, what do you know about that from talking to dead people? Can you tell me what it's going to be like when I cross? Will I see spirits? Will I see my dog? Will I have, like, people have been so curious to say, what am I going to? And her last question was about money.
And a lot of people, as I was mentioning before, their last questions are more so about how to set up their loved ones who will be left behind to grieve well, to know that they're loved in their grief and cared for. And my mind is like boggled.
Yeah, me too. And I understand why, because it's not the way we think. I would not want that to be my last group of thoughts, to be around money, to be around, did this man just use me? These were her very last questions, as opposed to, am I loved? Am I safe? Enjoying being loved, enjoying being cared for.
Well, and I think you can only get to that place that you're talking about if you are actively working on yourself in this life, if you are putting in what we call the dirty work, to work with a therapist, to read books, to be focused on health, healthy living, healthy connections, because without those things, all you've got is worry. All you've got is anxiety and depression. And sure, money's a great focus when you've got those 2 things because it keeps you actively avoiding connection.
Yeah. And her guides had asked in a prior session a whole bunch of questions about connection. Did you hug? Did you listen with compassion? Did you show interest? Did you feel interested in somebody? I remember them asking her things like, did you paint? And she was like, no, I'm not a hugging kind of person. No, I'm not interested in paint. No.
So you disengaged from life.
Yeah. And there were all of these questions around. The guide said to her in one session, did you? And these were all the things that she dismissed, didn't want to even show curiosity towards. And if somebody hugged her, well, yeah, like I'll hug my mom, but like a mom. So they were trying to point out to her, I think that was around the 4th session, that there was no attempt on her part to know herself and connect to herself, or to know or to connect to other people, or even to the pets in the house. There are pets in the house, and it's just like, yeah, you feed them.
It's just getting sadder and sadder.
Yeah, you walk them. Yeah, you do those things, but you don't actually feel connected to them. So it's very much around function as opposed to feelings.
I'm obsessed with Audible. I've been binging books left, right, and center, and I will purposely look down at Parker or Winston and say, okay, no audio today on the walk. It's just you and me. Like, I'm going to connect to you, your needs, our sync, not a book.
Yeah.
I know she will. I think we just say it. I hope she gets what she needs when she passes.
Yeah, me too.
You can't hear, that's for sure. Not if you're that disengaged right up until that point.
Yeah, and I found the whole thing so interesting that she took all of these sessions and money, given that she's so concerned about money, and called me to ask me these questions, to go through all of these different things, to figure something out. But it still felt like even within those sessions that there was still always just a disconnection. Mm-hmm. Even though I feel very connected to her spirit and to her spirit guides. Mm-hmm. There's no real way other than just answering the questions that I feel actually connected to Badia.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tough story, but I hope...
Yeah, you better come back with a happy one next Saturday.
I do.
Great.
I will redeem myself.
I appreciate the lessons.
Yeah, I know sometimes some of these shows, I just think, oh my God, I hope clients will stay with us and the listeners will continue to listen. Because, sometimes we'll record one of these shows, I walk away, Kelly, and I think, oh my God, I wonder if we're going to lose people with these stories. But
I guess you can worry, but I think more so, especially our regular listeners, would walk away from this and go, oh, Mom didn't connect. She disconnected. That's why she held on. Oh, my depression, I'm disconnected. I'm not showing interest. I'm not making efforts. I'm taking.
Right.
Like the whole point that we say at the very beginning of every show, it's in our standard intro, find pieces of yourself in these shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't, you're not doing the
dirty work.
Here. Well, thanks for showing up today.
You're very welcome.
I do have a life insurance policy in your name, by the way, just in case we're both worried.
Thank you. I do believe I have a life insurance policy in yours and Andrew's name too.
Beautiful. Thanks for listening to Coffee with the Sarlos. If you enjoyed the show today, help spread the love with a like, share, or review of the podcast. See you next Saturday with a brand new episode.